The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with noise. Representatives from 47 different species talked, argued, and laughed. Their voices echoed off walls made of crystal and metal. Lights floated in the air above them, casting shadows that danced across the floor. In the far corner, away from the noise, sat a single human woman. Her name was Hannah Choi, and she was Earth's ambassador. She wore a simple gray suit. Her black hair was tied back in a neat style. Her hands rested on the table in front of her, and her face showed nothing. No anger, no sadness, no interest at all. The delegates from other worlds called her the statue. They had called her this for years. In 150 years of Earth's membership in the Galactic Council, no human ambassador had ever spoken during a session. Not once. They came. They sat. They watched. And then they left. Today was no different. A tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms stood at the center podium. His name was Dren, and he was the High Counselor of the Varith Dominion. His people had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. When he spoke, everyone listened. "The matter of the outer trade routes is settled," Dren announced. His voice was deep and carried easily across the hall. "The Calorie Empire will manage security. All ships passing through will pay the standard fee." Across the room, Commander Voss of the Calorie Empire nodded with satisfaction. He was a massive creature, covered in thick gray scales. His eyes were yellow and cold. The Calorie were known throughout the galaxy as warriors. They had conquered 12 systems in the last century alone. Voss turned his head toward the corner where Hannah sat. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Perhaps," Voss said loudly, "we should ask our human friends for their opinion. They have ships that travel through those routes, do they not?" Laughter filled the chamber. Several delegates turned to look at Hannah. She did not move. She did not blink. "Oh, I forgot," Voss continued. "Humans do not speak. They are too busy crawling between their tiny planets and their slow little ships." More laughter. Dren did not stop it. He seemed amused. Hannah sat perfectly still. Her eyes remained fixed on a point somewhere in the middle distance. If the words hurt her, she gave no sign of it. Far away, on a planet called Earth, an old man watched the scene on a large screen. His name was Taiho Park, and he was an admiral in Earth's military. His hair was gray, and deep lines marked his face. He had seen many things in his 63 years of life, but the sight of his people being mocked still made his hands tighten into fists. "He'd never get tired of it," said a woman standing beside him. Her name was Una Beak. She was younger than Taiho, perhaps 40 years old. She wore a white coat, and her eyes were sharp and intelligent. She was the lead scientist of a project so secret that fewer than 100 people on Earth knew it existed. "No," Taiho agreed. "They never do," he remembered the first time. He had been a young officer then, barely 20 years old. Earth had just made contact with the galaxy. Humans had been so excited. They thought they would find friends among the stars. They thought their technology would impress these advanced civilizations. They had been wrong at that first meeting. Earth's representatives had proudly presented their fusion reactors. It was humanity's greatest achievement. Clean energy that could power cities for centuries. The human scientists had smiled with pride as they explained how it worked. The alien delegates had laughed. Fusion power, they said, was something their ancestors had used thousands of years ago. It was primitive, outdated, a child's toy. Earth's representatives had stood, or in shock as the laughter echoed around them. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment humanity understood its place in the galaxy. They were nothing. Less than nothing. They were a joke. But Taiho had seen something else that day. He had seen the looks on the aliens' faces, the contempt, the dismissal, and he had made a decision. He would never let his people be caught weak again. "Project Horizon," Taiho said, still watching the screen. "Status report." Una pulled out a small tablet. 98% complete. All 14 shipyards are operational. Fleet strength is at 512 vessels. Weapon systems are fully tested. The dimensional fold drives are stable. Taiho nodded slowly. 150 years of work? 150 years of building in secret. 150 years of letting the galaxy think humans were primitive and weak. The Council thinks we have 20 ships, Una said. Old cargo vessels and a few patrol craft. Good, let them think that. On the screen, the session was ending. Hannah Choi stood up from her seat and walked toward the exit. Other delegates moved out of her way, not out of respect, but because they did not want to be near her, as if being human was a disease they might catch. A young delegate from the Solani Federation watched Hannah leave. Her name was Mira, and unlike most of the Council, she did not laugh at humans. She found them strange, fascinating. A species that had been mocked for over a century, but never fought back, never even raised their voice. Why? Mira did not know. But something in Hannah's eyes made her uneasy. It was not fear. It was not submission. It was something else. Something patient. Something waiting back on Earth. Taiho turned off the screen. The room fell into darkness, lit only by the soft glow of control panels and displays. How much longer do we wait? Una asked. Taiho walked to the window. Outside, the city of Seoul stretched toward the horizon. Millions of people lived their lives below, unaware of the ships hidden beneath the mountains, beneath the oceans, beneath the very ground they walked on. We wait until we have no choice, Taiho said. We are not like them, Una. We do not start wars. We do not attack the weak. But when they push us too far, when they force our hand, we will show them what we have become. Una joined him at the window. And if they never push us that far? Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft but firm.
They will.
Creatures like Voss and Drin cannot help themselves. They see our silence as weakness, our patience as fear. One day, they will go too far. And on that day, they will learn the truth. What truth? Taiho turned to look at her. His eyes were hard, but there was no anger in them. Only certainty. That our silence was never weakness. It was preparation. And we have been preparing for a very long time. Somewhere in the darkness of space, hidden from every scanner and every sensor in the galaxy, 500 human warships waited. Their crews ran drills. Their weapons stayed ready. Their engines hummed with power that the galaxy had never seen before. Earth stayed silent, but Earth was not asleep. Earth was watching, learning, growing stronger with every passing year, and when the time came, the galaxy would remember why silence could be the most terrifying sound of all. 6 months passed. The galaxy continued its business. Wars were fought in distant systems. Trade routes opened and closed. Species rose and fell. And through it all, Earth remained quiet. The 89th Galactic Summit was held on Varith Prime, the capital world of the Varith Dominion. It was a planet of towering cities made from glass and light. Ships from 100 worlds filled its skies. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. The largest building ever constructed, Ambassador Hannah Choi arrived alone. She wore the same gray suit she always wore. She carried no guards, no assistants, no documents. She simply walked through the massive doors, found her seat in the corner, and sat down. The other delegates barely noticed her. She was furniture to them. A piece of decoration that came with every summit but served no purpose. High Counselor Dren opened the summit with a speech about unity and cooperation. His words were pretty, but empty. Everyone knew the real business happened in the arguments that followed. Today's main topic was the Outer Rim Crisis. 3 species were fighting over territory near the edge of known space. The war had disrupted trade routes, and wealthy planets were losing money. Something had to be done. Commander Voss stood at the podium. His yellow eyes swept across the assembly. He enjoyed these moments. He enjoyed having everyone's attention. The solution is simple, Voss declared. The Kalori Empire will send a peacekeeping force to the Outer Rim. We will restore order. All we ask is that other species contribute resources and soldiers to support our efforts. Murmurs spread through the hall. The Kalori's peacekeeping forces had a reputation. Planets they helped often found themselves under. Kalori influence for decades afterward. A delegate from a small federation raised his hand. What kind of contributions are you asking for? Voss smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Ships, supplies, and soldiers, of course. Every species should send troops according to their population. It is only fair. And what about species who cannot contribute much? Another delegate asked. Then they contribute what they can. Voss turned his head slowly, deliberately, toward the corner where Hannah sat. Some species are not good for much. Their technology is primitive. Their military is weak, but even they can provide bodies for the front lines. The message was clear. Everyone in the hall understood who Voss was talking about. Laughter rippled through the assembly. Delegates from powerful worlds nudged each other and pointed at the human ambassador. She sat motionless, her expression blank. Perhaps humans could serve as scouts, someone called out. Their slow ships would give the enemy something to shoot at while the real fleet gets into position. More laughter. Louder this time. High Counselor Dren raised a hand for silence, but he was smiling too. Commander Voss makes an interesting point. Lesser species must learn to contribute. Perhaps this crisis is an opportunity for them to prove their worth. He looked directly at Hannah. What say you, Ambassador? Will Earth send soldiers to die for the greater good of the galaxy? Every eye in the hall turned to Hannah Choi. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Hannah did not speak. She did not move. She simply sat there, looking back at Dren with eyes that revealed nothing. Dren shook his head with mock disappointment. As expected, the humans have nothing to say. Perhaps their vocal cords are as underdeveloped as their technology. The hall exploded with laughter. Even species who usually stayed neutral joined in. The sound echoed off the walls and ceiling, filling every corner of the massive room. In the corner, Hannah Choi's hands remained still on the table. Her breathing stayed even. But if anyone had looked closely, they might have seen something in her eyes. A small spark. A tiny flame that had not been there before. On Earth, Admiral Taiho watched the summit broadcast in his command center. The room was dark, except for the glow of screens. Officers sat at stations around him, monitoring communications from across the solar system. Dr. Unibeak stood at his side. Her face was pale with anger. They're testing us, she said, pushing to see how far they can go. Taiho nodded. They have been testing us for 150 years. This is nothing new, but it is getting worse. Voss is talking about using humans as expendable soldiers. As targets. How long do we let this continue? Taiho did not answer right away. He watched the screen where delegates were still laughing at his species. His people. His family. He remembered his grandfather who had died before first contact. A simple farmer who had looked up at the stars and dreamed of the wonders that might be waiting there. If his grandfather could see what humanity had found among those stars, what would he think? Project Horizon is ready, Eunice said quietly. It has been ready for 50 years. We have ships that could destroy their entire fleet. Weapons they cannot imagine. Technology that makes theirs look like children's toys. Why do we hide? Because power without wisdom is destruction, Taiho said. We could reveal ourselves. We could make them fear us. But then what? We become like them. Bullies who use strength to hurt the weak, so we just accept their insults, their mockery. We accept nothing. Taiho turned to face her. We wait. We prepare. And when the time comes, we show them that there is another way. A better way. And when will that time come? Taiho looked back at the screen. The summit was moving on to other business. The moment of humiliation had passed, forgotten by those who had caused it. Just another joke at the expense of the primitive humans. Soon, Taiho said. I can feel it. They are not satisfied with words anymore. Creatures like Voss need action. They need to prove their dominance. And when they try to prove it against us, we will be ready. On Verith Prime, the summit ended. Delegates filed out of the hall, chatting and making deals. Ambassador Hannah walked toward the exit, alone as always. A voice stopped her. Ambassador Choi. Hannah turned. A young alien woman stood behind her. She had silver skin and large dark eyes. Her name was Mira, and she was a delegate from the Solani Federation. "May I walk with you?" Mira asked. Hannah studied her for a moment, then nodded. They walked together through the crystal corridors of the assembly building. Outside the windows, the lights of Aerith Prime glittered like stars. "I do not laugh at your people," Mira said. "I want you to know that." "I know," Hannah replied. Her voice was soft and calm. "Why do you let them treat you this way? You come to every summit. You sit through every insult. But you never speak. Never defend yourself. Why?" Hannah was quiet for a long moment. They reached a balcony overlooking the city. Ships flew past in the distance, their lights blinking against the dark sky. "When I was a child," Hannah said, "my grandmother told me a story. There was once a small tree growing in the shadow of a great mountain. The mountain laughed at the tree. It said the tree was weak and small and would never amount to anything. The tree did not argue. It simply kept growing, year after year, century after century. What happened?" Hannah turned to look at Mira, and for the first time, Mira saw something in the human's eyes that made her heart skip. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was patience. Infinite, terrifying patience. One day, Hannah continued, the mountain looked down and realized the tree had grown so tall that it blocked out the sun. The mountain asked, "How did you become so strong?" And the tree replied, "You were so busy laughing that you forgot to watch me grow." Mira felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you saying?" Hannah smiled. It was a small smile, but it changed her entire face. She no longer looked like a statue. She looked like something ancient and powerful. "I am saying that when we finally speak, the galaxy will wish we had stayed silent." She turned and walked away, leaving Mira alone on the balcony. The young delegate watched her go, and for the first time in her life, she understood what real fear felt like. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were waiting. And Mira suddenly felt very certain that the wait was almost over. The attack came without warning. Captain Junho Lee was drinking coffee in the command center of the Morning Star when the alarms started screaming. He was a young man, only 32 years old, with tired eyes and steady hands. He had spent 5 years protecting the mining colonies around Jupiter. It was quiet work. Boring, even. "Nothing ever happened this far from the main trade routes until now, Captain," his sensor officer shouted. "Multiple contacts, dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Colliery signatures. At least 20 warships?" Junho set down his coffee. His heart was beating fast, but his voice stayed calm. "Raise shields. Send a message to Earth Command. And get me a visual." The main screen flickered to life. 20 Kalor warships hung in the darkness of space. They were massive things, covered in weapons and armor. Each one was 10 times the size of the Morning Star. "They are hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put it through." The face of Commander Voss appeared on screen. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel pleasure. "Human vessel," Voss said. "You are in Calorie space. Your presence here is an act of aggression against the Empire." Junho frowned. "This is human territory. These are our colonies. We have been here for 80 years. The Galactic Council has recognized Kalori claims to this sector. You have 1 minute to surrender your ship and evacuate your people. After that, we will consider you hostile." The Council never voted on any such thing. "This is illegal. This is an act of war," Boss smiled. "War? Against humans? That would require you to be capable of fighting back." The transmission ended. Jono stared at the blank screen. His hands were shaking now. 20 warships against 1 small patrol vessel. It was not a battle. It was an execution, Captain, his first officer said quietly. "What do we do?" Junho thought about his crew. 47 people who trusted him. 47 families who were waiting for them back home. He thought about the mining stations on Europa and Titan. Thousands of civilians, workers, children. "Send a distress call to every human ship in the system," Junho ordered. then broadcast to the Kalor fleet. Tell them we will not fire first. Tell them we are not a threat. Tell them there are civilians here. Sir, they are powering weapons. Junho closed his eyes. I know. The first shot hit the Morning Star's shield. The second went through it like paper. The third tore the ship in half. Captain Junho Lee died instantly. His last thought was of his mother, waiting for him on Earth, not knowing that she would never see her son again. On Europa Station, Dr. Mingi Kong watched the Morning Star explode. She was standing at a window in the medical bay, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. She was 45 years old, a doctor who had spent her career healing miners injured in accidents. She had never seen combat. She had never seen anyone die. The station shook as the first calorie missiles hit. Alarms screamed. People started running. Children cried for their parents. Mingi dropped her tea and ran to the emergency evacuation center. Her training took over. She helped people into escape pods. She bandaged wounds. She held the hands of those too injured to move and told them everything would be okay, even though she knew it was a lie. Through the windows, she watched the Kalori ships destroy the mining platforms one by one. Explosions lit up the darkness. Debris floated everywhere. Bodies floated with it. Doctor, a nurse shouted. The last escape pod is leaving. We have to go now. Minji looked around. The evacuation center was empty except for the dead. She had done everything she could. She climbed into the pod and strapped herself in. As the pod launched, she activated its camera and began recording. She did not know if anyone would ever see the recording, but she knew someone had to witness this. Someone had to remember. The pod drifted away from Europa Station just as the Kalori ships opened fire on its main reactor. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but Mingi felt it in her bones. A flash of light, and then nothing. 4,000 people. Gone in an instant. Minji floated in darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of her home. Her recording device captured everything. The destroyed stations, the burning ships, the Kalori fleet, moving on to its next target. She transmitted the recording to Earth on every frequency she could reach. Then she closed her eyes and waited to be rescued or to die. At that moment, she did not care which. The footage reached Earth 3 hours later. Admiral Taiho was in a meeting when his aide burst through the door. The look on the young man's face told Taiho everything he needed to know. Before a single word was spoken, they watched the recording in silence. Taiho, Yuna, and a dozen senior officers. They watched the Morning Star die. They watched Europa Station burn. They watched 4,000 people murdered by ships that should never have been in human space. When the recording ended, no one spoke. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of computers. Then Taiho stood up. His face was pale. His hands were steady. How many? He asked. 4,000 confirmed dead, his aide replied. Titan Station was also hit. Another 200 casualties. Several mining ships were destroyed while trying to flee. Total losses are still being counted. People, fathers, mothers, children, workers, who just wanted to earn a living and go home to their families dead because the Kalori thought humans were weak. What is the Council's response? Taiho asked. The aide looked uncomfortable. High Counselor Dren has classified it as a minor border dispute. He says the Kalori had legitimate claims to the sector and were within their rights to enforce them. Legitimate claims. Taiho repeated the words slowly. Tasting their bitterness, Commander Voss released a statement. He said, and I quote, "Perhaps Earth will learn to respect their betters." Silence fell again. Taiho walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Seoul was peaceful. People walked through parks. Children played in the streets. They did not know yet. Soon they would. Sir Yuna said quietly, "What do we do?" Taiho did not answer immediately. He thought about 150 years of insults. 150 years of patience. 150 years of building in secret, waiting for a moment he hoped would never come, It had come. Broadcast the recording, Taiho said. Every channel. Every screen. Everyone on Earth needs to see what happened. It will cause panic. No, it will cause unity. He turned to face his officers. And then contact Ambassador Choi. Tell her to request an emergency session of the Galactic Council. What are we going to do? Taiho's eyes were hard. We are going to speak. That night, the people of Earth watched the recording. They saw their stations burn. They saw their ships die. They saw their people murdered while the galaxy laughed. And then something happened that had not happened in 150 years. Earth grew quiet. Not the quiet of submission. Not the quiet of fear. A different kind of quiet. The quiet of 8 billion people making the same decision at the same moment, in hidden shipyards beneath mountains and oceans. Crews rushed to their stations. 500 warships powered up their engines. Weapon systems came online. Dimensional full drives hummed with energy that could tear holes in space. In a small apartment in Seoul, Admiral Taiho attended a memorial service for the victims. A little girl tugged at his sleeve. Her eyes were red from crying. My father was on Europa Station, she said. Are we going to do something? Taiho knelt down so he could look her in the eye. He saw her pain, her fear, her hope. Yes, he said. I promise you. We are going to do something. He stood up and walked away. Behind him, the girl watched him go. She did not know who he was. She did not know what he commanded. But somehow, she believed him. The galaxy had finally pushed too far. And now, after 150 years of silence, Earth was ready to answer. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so full. Every seat was taken. Delegates stood along the walls and crowded into the doorways. Representatives from all 47 species had come to witness what everyone assumed would be Earth's final humiliation. The emergency session had been requested by the humans themselves. The galaxy was curious. What could the primitive species possibly want? To beg for mercy? To demand justice they had no power to enforce. Whatever it was, it promised to be entertaining. High Counselor Dren sat at the center podium, his forearms folded across his chest. Commander Voss stood nearby, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The Kalori commander had become a hero in his empire. The attack on the human colonies was being celebrated as a great victory. Ambassador Hannah Choi entered the hall alone. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. For 150 years, the human ambassador had sat in the corner and said nothing. Today, she walked directly to the speaker's platform. At the center of the chamber, whispers rippled through the crowd. The statue moves. Someone said, perhaps it will finally speak. Another replied. Laughter bubbled up, then faded. Something about the way Hannah carried herself made the jokes feel hollow. She did not look defeated. She did not look afraid. She looked like a woman who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Hannah reached the platform, stood before the assembly. She did not speak immediately. She simply looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. Some looked away. Others stared back with contempt. A few, like Mira of the Solani Federation, watched with something close to fear. You may speak, Dren said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. Hannah nodded. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. It carried to every corner of the massive hall. 150 years ago, humanity joined this council. We came with hope. We came with dreams of friendship and cooperation. We presented our greatest achievement, our fusion reactors, and you laughed at us. She paused. The hall was utterly silent. We could have been angry. We could have demanded respect. Instead, we chose to listen, to watch, to learn. Her eyes found Commander Voss. Every technology you discarded as primitive, we studied. Every weapon you called obsolete, we examined. Every strategy you discussed openly in these halls, we recorded and analyzed. Dren shifted in his seat. Something in Hannah's voice was making him uncomfortable. Thought our silence was weakness, Hannah continued. You thought our patience was fear. You thought we had nothing to offer the galaxy but bodies for your wars and jokes for your entertainment. Well, she smiled. It was a small smile, but it sent chills down the spines of everyone who saw it. You were wrong. She raised her hand. A holographic display appeared above the assembly, showing empty space. Stars glittered in the darkness. 2 weeks ago, Commander Voss attacked our colonies. 4,000 of our people died. The council called it a minor border dispute. Her voice hardened. I call it murder. Voss stood up, his scales bristling with anger. How dare you accuse the Calorie Empire of— Sit down, Hannah said. Her voice was not loud. She did not shout, but something in her tone made Voss freeze. He stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. For 150 years, we let you believe we were weak. We let you mock us, insult us, ignore us. We did this for one simple reason. She looked around the hall. We were not ready. On the holographic display, something changed. Points of light began appearing. 1, then 10, then 100. We are ready now. The lights resolved into shapes. Ships. Human ships. But not the small, slow vessels the galaxy knew. These were massive warships, bristling with weapons and technology that made the most advanced cavalry cruisers look like toys. 500 ships. An entire fleet that had never appeared on any scan, any sensor. Any report in the galaxy's history, the assembly erupted in chaos. Delegates jumped to their feet. Shouts and screams filled the air. Voss stared at the display with wide eyes, his scales turning pale. Impossible, he whispered. Our scanners would have detected your scanners. See what we allow them to see, Hannah said. We learned to hide from your technology on the first day we studied it. Dren rose from his podium. This is a trick, a bluff. You cannot possibly— A new voice cut through the noise. It came from the speakers throughout the hall, broadcast from somewhere far away. This is Admiral Taiho Park of the Earth Defense Fleet, commanding from the flagship Eternal Dawn. On the display, one ship moved forward. It was larger than the others, its hull gleaming with strange energy that seemed to bend light itself. 12 hours ago, Taiho continued, my fleet engaged the Calorie task force that destroyed our colonies. We disabled every ship without destroying them. Their weapons are offline. Their engines are dead. They are drifting in space, waiting to be retrieved. Voss's face twisted with rage. You attacked Kolor vessels. This is an act of war. No, Taiho replied calmly. This is self-defense. We did not destroy your ships. We did not kill your crews. We simply removed their ability to harm anyone else. A new image appeared on the display. 20 Calorie warships, dark and powerless, floating helplessly in space. We could have destroyed them, Taiho said. Our weapons are capable of breaking the molecular bonds of any material in the galaxy. We could turn your ships to dust in seconds, but we chose not to, because we are not like you. The hall fell silent again. Delegates stared at the display, struggling to understand what they were seeing. The primitive humans. The weak species that could barely manage fusion power. They had built a fleet capable of defeating the Kalor without firing a lethal shot. Hannah spoke again. We did not build this fleet to conquer. We did not develop these weapons to threaten. We did this because we had no choice. The galaxy showed us again and again that the weak are trampled. The silent are ignored. The peaceful are slaughtered. Her voice rose. 4,000 of our people are dead because you thought we could not fight back. Children, families, workers, who wanted nothing more than to live their lives in peace. She pointed at Voss. You will answer for what you have done? Not today. Today is not about revenge. Today is about making sure it never happens again. Stren tried to regain control. The Council demands that Earth stand down its fleet. This display of force is a violation of the Council demands nothing, Hannah interrupted. The Council laughed while our people died. The Council called mass murder a border dispute. The Council has lost the right to demand anything from humanity. She stepped closer to the podium. Her eyes locked on Dren's. "From this day forward, Earth will have a permanent seat on this council with full veto power. Not because we threaten you, because we have proven that we could destroy you and chose not to. That makes us more qualified to lead than any species in this room." No one spoke. No one moved. "We do not want your fear," Hannah said quietly. "We want your respect. There is a difference. Fear makes enemies. Respect makes allies. We would rather have allies." She turned to address the full assembly one last time. 150 years ago, you laughed at us. Today, I give you a choice. You can continue to see us as enemies to be feared, or you can see us as partners to be trusted. The choice is yours. She paused, letting her words sink in. But know this. We will never be silent again. We will never be victims again. And if anyone ever threatens our people the way the Calor did, they will learn that the galaxy has never faced anything like humanity before. Hannah stepped down from the platform. The hall remained frozen in stunned silence as she walked toward the exit at the doorway. She stopped and looked back over her shoulder. "This session is adjourned," she walked out, leaving behind a galaxy that would never see humanity the same way again. 1 year had passed since the day humanity revealed its true power. The galaxy was different now. It's not completely transformed, but changed in ways both large and small. The species who had laughed at humans for over a century now watched them with new eyes. Some with respect, some with fear, some with both. The Galactic Council had been restructured. Earth held a permanent seat with full voting power, just as Ambassador Hannah had demanded. No major decision could pass without human approval. It was a position of influence that would have been unthinkable just 12 months ago. Commander Voss was gone. The Calori Empire, facing pressure from dozens of species who suddenly saw the danger of unchecked aggression, had removed him from command. A tribunal was formed to try him for war crimes. The proceedings were slow, tangled in political complications, but they were happening. Justice, long delayed, was finally being served. High Counselor Dren remained in his position, but his power had diminished. The Varith Dominion was no longer the unquestioned leader of the galaxy. Other species, inspired by humanity's example, had begun demanding changes. More equality, more accountability, more respect for smaller civilizations. On Earth, life continued much as it had before. People worked and played and raised their families. Children went to school. Farmers tended their fields. The Hidden Fleet remained hidden, its existence known only to those who needed to know. Most humans went about their lives unaware of the ships sleeping beneath their mountains and oceans, ready to wake if ever needed again. Admiral Taiho Park had retired. After 63 years of service, he finally allowed himself to rest. He spent his days in a small house near the sea, tending a garden and watching the waves roll in. Sometimes young officers came to visit him, seeking wisdom from the man who had built Earth's secret defense. He welcomed them all, sharing tea, and stories and hard-won lessons about patience and strength. His replacement was a man named Sung-Woo Yoon. Captain Yoon had been stationed on Titan when the Calray attacked. He had survived the bombardment, rescued dozens of civilians, and joined the military the day after returning to Earth. He carried the memory of that day with him always. It drove him to ensure that no human would ever experience such helplessness again. Dr. Unibeek continued her work at Horizon Command, but her focus had shifted. The fleet was complete. The weapons were ready. Now she led a new initiative. Selected technologies were being shared with species who asked for help. Not weapons, never weapons, but medical advances that could cure diseases thought incurable. Agricultural systems that could feed starving populations. Clean energy that could lift civilizations out of poverty. We were given nothing when we needed help, Yuna explained to her team. That does not mean we should do the same to others. Ambassador Hannah Choi still attended every council session. She no longer sat in the corner. Her seat was at the main table now, among the most powerful representatives in the galaxy. She spoke when she had something to say, and remained silent when she did not. But when she spoke, everyone listened. No one called her the statue anymore. Delegate Myra of the Solani Federation had become Earth's closest ally. To reform the Council from within, pushing for policies that protected smaller species from exploitation. When others asked why she fought so hard for causes that did not benefit her own people, she simply smiled and said that humanity had taught her something important. That true strength was not about domination, it was about lifting others up. But perhaps the most meaningful change was the smallest one. On Europa, where 4,000 people had died, a memorial had been built. It was a simple structure. A wall of crystal that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the rebuilt station. Every name was etched into the crystal. Every life remembered. Dr. Minji Kong stood before the memorial. She came here often, whenever her work at the Interspecies Medical Initiative allowed. The initiative was her creation, a program that brought human doctors to worlds that had never known modern medicine. She had saved thousands of lives in the past year, but she never forgot the lives she could not save. She placed a flower at the base of the wall, near the name of Captain Junho Lee. She had never met him. She had watched his ship die, and she carried that moment with her always. "I hope you can see what we have built," she whispered. "I hope you know that you did not die for nothing." Sound behind her made her turn. A young alien girl stood nearby, watching with curious eyes. She was Solani, with silver skin and dark eyes like Mira's. She could not have been more than 10 years old. "What is this place?" the girl asked. Minji smiled gently. "It is a memorial, a place where we remember people who died." "Why do you remember them?" "Because they were important, because what happened to them should never happen again. And because remembering is how we honor those we have lost." The girl thought about this, and she looked up at Minji with innocent curiosity. "My grandmother tells stories about your people," she said. "She says humans were quiet for a very long time. She says everyone thought you were weak. That is true, but you were not weak. You were waiting." Minji nodded. "Yes, we were waiting. Why?" Minji looked back at the memorial. The light scattered through the crystal, painting colors across the ground. She thought about Admiral Taiho and his patience. She thought about Ambassador Hannah and her silence. She thought about the fleet that slept beneath Earth's surface and the scientists who had worked for generations to build it. "We were waiting until we were strong enough that we did not have to use our strength," she said finally. "We wanted to show the galaxy that power does not have to mean cruelty. That being capable of destruction does not mean you must destroy." The girl tilted her head. "My grandmother says that is why humans lead the council now, not because you can destroy everyone, but because you chose not to. Your grandmother is very wise." The girl smiled. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flower. It was different from the one Minji had placed, with petals of deep blue that seemed to glow from within. "This is a memory flower," the girl said. "We plant them for people we want to remember. May I leave one here?" Minji felt tears prick at her eyes. "I think they would like that very much." The girl carefully placed her flower next to Minji's. They stood together in silence, two people from different worlds, united by a simple act of remembrance. In the distance, ships passed overhead. Human vessels and alien craft traveling together along routes that were safer now than they had ever been. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still injustices, still work to be done. But something had changed. A new idea had taken root, that the strongest are those who protect the weak. That silence can be preparation, not surrender. That patience and restraint are not signs of fear, but of wisdom. The girl looked up at Minji one last time. "Will you tell me about them?" she asked, gesturing at the memorial. "The people who died?" Minji took the girl's hand. "I will tell you everything I know." They walked along the wall together, and Minji began to speak. She told stories of miners and engineers, of families and friends, of ordinary people who had lived ordinary lives until extraordinary violence took them away. She spoke their names so they would not be forgotten. Behind them, the crystal wall caught the starlight and scattered it like hope across the darkness. Humanity had been silent for 150 years. They had endured mockery and contempt, and finally tragedy. But they had emerged not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as leaders. Not because they demanded it, because they had earned it. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Earth's silence had never been weakness. It had been mercy. In mercy, in the end, was the greatest strength of all.